Our next speaker is Dr. M. Arif Riaza from the National Hospital Kandy, who's going to speak on. She's a senior registrar in nephrology, and she's going to speak on kidneys in monoclonal gammopathies. Over to you, Dr. Riaza.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank Ceylon College of Physicians for giving me this opportunity. Today, my topic is kidneys in monoclonal gammopathies. I would mainly highlight on monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance because there is a confusion how to diagnose it and do these patients need treatment, these MGRS patients. So the contents would be what is monoclonal gammopathy, the renal manifestations of multiple myeloma, Waldenström macroglobulinemia, CLL and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. What is monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance? And then monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance. The definition and classification, pathogenesis, clinical presentation, diagnosis, treatment, and the role of physician and nephrologist in monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance. To start with, I would like to present a case history. This patient recently presented to us, referred by a general physician. She was a 55 years old female, previously unevaluated. She presented with loss of appetite and loss of weight for 2 months and generalized body swelling for 2 weeks. The swelling was prominent in the morning. She has not noticed any frothy urine, hematuria, or reduced urine output. There was no exertional shortness of breath, orthopnea, or paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. She denied any altered bowel habits. There was no history suggestive of tuberculosis or any contact history of tuberculosis. She didn't have oral ulcer, alopecia, or joint pain, and there was no drenching night sweat or fever. She denied back pain or neurological symptoms, and there was no past history or family history of malignancies, tuberculosis, diabetes mellitus, or rheumatological illness. On examination, she was not pale. There was periorbital swelling and lower limb edema. She didn't have malarash, alopecia, or oral ulcer. There was no lymphadenopathy or finger clubbing, and all the system examinations were normal. On investigation, HB was normal, platelet and WBC counts were elevated, blood picture showed evidence of chronic inflammation without atypical cells. Her ESR and CRP were elevated, serum creatinine was high, serum potassium normal, UFR showed 3+ proteinuria, but there was no active sediments. In the urine protein creatinine ratio, it was in nephrotic range and serum albumin was low. So she had nephrotic syndrome and her fasting blood sugar was normal. Her ultrasound scan KUB showed bilateral echogenic normal size kidneys. There was no any hepatosplenomegaly. Urine Bence-Jones protein was positive. Serum calcium and phosphate were normal. Skeletal survey was negative. Chest X-ray normal. HIV VDRL negative. ANA was negative. Hepatitis BC screening were negative. Complement C3 and C4 level was normal. 2D echo was normal. So we proceeded with serum protein electrophoresis. It showed a monoclonal band in gamma region. The estimated M protein concentration was 2.8 gram per deciliter. And serum immunofixation showed IgA with kappa band. Bone marrow biopsy showed less than 10% clonal plasma cell infiltration. We proceeded with renal biopsy and there was amyloidosis with cast nephropathy with kappa light chain restriction. This is the histology picture of this patient. It shows renal tubule. Within that you can see the cast. This is H&E stain of the glomerulus showing amyloid deposit within the glomerulus. This is a blood vessel showing marked hyalinosis of the vessel. And this is Congo red stain of the renal histology. It shows apple green birefringence around the blood vessels and glomeruli. So what's the diagnosis here? Is it multiple myeloma? Is it monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance or monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance? I'll come into that later. What is monoclonal gammopathy? It is overproduction of monoclonal protein by clonal expansion of cells from B cell lineage. This slide shows structure of an immunoglobulin. These immunoglobulin contain 2 heavy chains and 2 light chains. It could be either kappa chain or lambda chain. In monoclonal gammopathies, either there will be increased production of whole immunoglobulin structure or light chain only or rarely heavy chain only. So these are the monoclonal gammopathies: multiple myeloma, Waldenström macroglobulinemia, CLL, smoldering myeloma, monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance, and monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance. Multiple myeloma. You all know the diagnostic criteria. We should have clonal bone marrow plasma cells 10 or more than 10%, plus one of the end organ damage should be there to diagnose multiple myeloma. A bit on renal lesions in multiple myeloma. It could be paraprotein related. They are light chain cast nephropathy, right chain related proximal tubular injury with Fanconi syndrome, light chain deposition disease, and amyloidosis. And also there can be metabolic disturbances causing renal injury like hypercalcemia and hyperuricemia. A bit on renal diseases in Waldenström macroglobulinemia. They can present with proteinuria and hematuria, and the lesions could be minimal change disease, membranous nephropathy, crescentic glomerulonephritis, membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis, amyloidosis, and there can be acute renal failure due to various other causes. In CLL and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, we can have prerenal injury due to poor oral intake, dehydration, sepsis, and hypoperfusion and drug-induced. Intrinsic renal damage could be due to glomerular diseases, thrombotic microangiopathy, acute tubular necrosis, and acute interstitial nephritis. And also post-renal causes. In these tumors, the tumor or lymph node can compress the pelvic ileal system and lead to obstructive uropathy. And also they can develop tumor lysis syndrome and uric acid nephropathy and renal injury. So these are the glomerular diseases seen in CLL and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, mainly AL amyloidosis, membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis, minimal change disease, and light chain cast nephropathy. So next I would like to move on to monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance. So this is the diagnostic criteria. Serum monoclonal protein should be less than 3 gram per deciliter, and clonal bone marrow plasma cell should be less than 10%, and there should not be any end organ damage. So this MGUS, the term was first introduced in 1978 by Robert Kyle. It's a pre-malignant condition. These patients don't need any treatment, but they need continuous monitoring and see whether these patients progress to overt malignancy. If they progress to malignancy, we have to start appropriate treatment. So what is monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance? It's a monoclonal gammopathy. Here the patients don't meet criteria for diagnosis or treatment of symptomatic myeloma, Waldenström macroglobulinemia, non-Hodgkin lymphoma or CLL, but these patients have renal dysfunction and there is pathological finding in the renal biopsy. So how to differentiate MGUS from MGRS? So in both of these conditions, the clonal bone marrow plasma cell is less than 10% and serum M protein concentration is less than 3 gram per deciliter in both. So considering renal disease, in MGUS, they don't have renal impairment. In MGRS, they have renal impairment which is attributable to monoclonal gammopathy. And the other thing is, most of these MGUS patients are elderly patients. So most of the time they have renal impairment due to various other causes. So all the MGUS patients having renal impairment are not considered to have MGRS, because to diagnose MGRS, they should have renal biopsy evidence. So this MGRS term was introduced by International Kidney and Monoclonal Gammopathy Research Group in 2012. Again in 2017 April, they met and refined the definition and they updated the classification of MGRS related diseases. So this updated definition is, there should be one or more kidney lesion in the biopsy that are related to overproduction of monoclonal immunoglobulin, and they should have underlying B cell or plasma cell clone which doesn't cause tumor complication or meet any current hematological criteria for specific treatment. So there are a variety of renal diseases associated with this. So IKMG recommends these lesions should be referred to as MGRS associated lesion. So these MGRS patients can also progress to overt malignancy like in MGUS. When they are progressed to overt malignancy, these lesions are no longer called as MGRS. So this is 2017 IKMG classification. There are two broad groups. One group has monoclonal immunoglobulin deposit in the renal biopsy, and the other group doesn't have monoclonal deposit in renal biopsy. If they have monoclonal deposits, they are further subdivided into organized deposit and non-organized deposits. Under these organized deposits, you can see there can be fibrillar deposits in amyloidosis and fibrillar glomerulopathy, and microtubular deposits can be seen in immunoctoid glomerulopathy, cryoglobulinemic glomerulonephritis. And crystalline deposits or inclusions can be seen with light chain proximal tubulopathy, crystal storing histiocytosis, or crystalloglobulinemia. And non-organized deposits are seen in monoclonal immunoglobulin deposition disease and proliferative glomerulonephritis. And in the group where monoclonal immunoglobulin deposits are absent, they contain C3 glomerulopathy and thrombotic microangiopathy. Here we should have high clinical suspicion because C3 glomerulonephritis is diagnosed by a special stain, and in thrombotic microangiopathy, you all know in the biopsy there will be thrombi within the vasculature and there will be double contour appearance. So in these patients, there will not be any monoclonal deposits in the renal biopsy. So you should have high clinical suspicion in these cases, and you should screen for monoclonal gammopathies if you have high suspicion. So what's the pathogenesis of monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance? These intact immunoglobulins, they are not freely filtered through the glomerulus. So they deposit within the glomerulus and they initiate various inflammatory pathways and glomerular damage. Light chain and most of the heavy chains are freely filtered through the glomerulus and they reach the proximal tubule. In the proximal tubule, they interfere with the proximal tubular function, and reabsorption capability of proximal tubule is impaired. So they can develop Fanconi syndrome and they can develop acute tubular necrosis also. And the light chains which are reaching distal tubule can bind with uromodulin and form cast, and these casts are obstructing the renal tubule and lead to rupture of the renal tubules, and then the monoclonal proteins are leaking into the interstitium and they initiate the inflammation and injury. And some of these light chains can be reabsorbed by light tubular cells, and they interfere with lysosomal function and lead to reactive oxygen species production. They also initiate inflammation. These are direct injury. So there are indirect injury in C3 glomerulopathy and thrombotic microangiopathy. These monoclonal proteins are acting as autoantibody and they activate alternative pathway of complement system, and they activate inflammation and renal injury. In POEMS syndrome, vascular endothelial growth factor mediates the inflammation and injury. So I wanted to highlight on thrombotic microangiopathy because most of the thrombotic microangiopathy patients are presenting to the general physicians. This was a case study done in USA in 2016. They have selected 146 patients who had clinical diagnosis of thrombotic microangiopathy, and they have screened these patients for monoclonal immunoglobulin, presence of monoclonal immunoglobulin. They have found 20 patients had monoclonal immunoglobulin. Out of them, 15 had monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance. So they concluded there is high prevalence of monoclonal gammopathy in patients with thrombotic microangiopathy. So they have suggested all patients with thrombotic microangiopathy should be evaluated for monoclonal gammopathy if there is clinical suspicion. This is a case report of POEMS syndrome presenting with renal involvement as immunoctoid glomerulopathy. This is a monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance. So the clinical presentation, how do these MGRS patients present? They can present with acute renal failure in cast nephropathy and thrombotic microangiopathy. They can present with nephrotic syndrome and chronic kidney disease in amyloidosis and monoclonal immunoglobulin deposition disease. They can present with mixed nephrotic nephritic picture or RPGN in glomerulonephritis, mainly proliferative glomerulonephritis, cryoglobulinemia, C3 glomerulopathy, and immunoctoid glomerulopathy. They can present with subnephrotic proteinuria in monoclonal immunoglobulin deposition disease, light chain proximal tubulopathy, amyloidosis, and TMA. So this is a case report published in 2018, acquired Fanconi syndrome secondary to light chain deposition disease associated with MGRS. So some of the patients with MGRS may have more than one clinical entity. So this is a case report published in 2020. It was a 80 years old female who was diagnosed to have MGRS, and in the renal biopsy she had 3 clinical entities of MGRS. They were monoclonal immunoglobulin deposition disease, thrombotic microangiopathy, and proliferative glomerular nephritis. So diagnosing MGRS, it's challenging for hematologists, nephrologists, and renal pathologists. So delayed diagnosis lead to worst outcome. So we should have high clinical suspicion, because not all MGRS lesions demonstrate monoclonal protein deposition in kidney. Like I mentioned earlier, in C3 glomerulopathy and thrombotic microangiopathy, we can't see monoclonal proteins in renal biopsy. So in these two conditions, mainly we should have high clinical suspicion, and if the suspicion is high, we should screen them for monoclonal gammopathy. Algorithm for diagnosis. In suspected patients, we go ahead with renal biopsy and to identify the renal pathology, extent of damage, and to demonstrate the monoclonal deposits. We mainly use light microscopy and immunofluorescence, in some cases electron microscopy. And then we have to detect the monoclonal protein in serum and urine. So we usually do serum protein electrophoresis, urine protein electrophoresis, immunofluorescence, immunofixations, and serum free light chain assay. This is mainly important. Here we have to quantify the monoclonal protein, because to monitor the progression of disease and to see the response to treatment, we have to quantify the monoclonal protein and see the progression. And then we have to identify the clonal population. It's also important in the treatment. If the clones are having CD20 positive cells, we can consider rituximab in those patients. So clonal identification is mainly done by bone marrow aspiration, biopsy, and flow cytometry and immunohistochemistry. And in CLL and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, if there are lymph nodes, we can biopsy them, and we can do immunohistochemistry. And then identification of extrarenal involvement is also important, because in MGRS patient there can be coexisting cardiac amyloidosis. In cardiac amyloidosis, if the patient is having stage 1 or 2 cardiac amyloidosis, they can be subjected to autologous stem cell transplantation. If they are in stage 3 or 4 cardiac amyloidosis, they are contraindicated for autologous stem cell transplantation. So these are some extrarenal manifestations of MGRS entities. In amyloidosis, you can have cardiac, liver, nerve, skin, GIT, and pulmonary involvement. And in C3 glomerulopathy, you can see skin necrosis. And in light chain proximal tubulopathy with Fanconi syndrome, you can see osteomalacia, and so on. Treatment of monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance. It's a multidisciplinary approach by nephrologist, pathologist, hematologist, and hemato-oncologist. The treatment is no longer decided by the renal histology. It's a clone-directed therapy. In some patients, we can consider autologous stem cell transplantation. So prompt initiation of treatment is needed before irreversible renal damage occurs. The aim of treatment is to improve renal survival and reduce recurrence after renal transplantation. These are the drugs used in MGRS treatment. There are cytotoxic drugs, immunomodulatory drugs, proteasome inhibitors, and monoclonal antibodies. These days, these patients are treated by hemato-oncologists. Supportive treatment. If the patient is having thrombotic microangiopathy, we can consider plasma exchange, and in some patients, they need renal replacement therapy as a temporary measure or long-term measure. If the patient is having hypertension or proteinuria, we can consider ACE inhibitors or ARB, salt restriction, and diuretics. If the patient is having Fanconi syndrome, we have to prevent osteomalacia by giving bicarbonate, phosphate, and vitamin D supplementation. Response to treatment. A complete response is defined by negative serum and urine immunofixation and normal serum free light chain ratio. The response assessment is challenging because in some MGRS patients, there will not be detectable baseline paraprotein, and in some patients, we have not quantified the paraprotein level at the baseline. So these patients can be followed up using proteinuria and renal function and see whether they are improving with treatment. Is there a place for kidney transplant in MGRS patients? Yes. Kidney transplant has been successfully performed without recurrence of disease in patients with complete hematological response. What KDIGO suggests? In monoclonal immunoglobulin deposition disease, we can include the patient in KT program if they have received potentially curative treatment and if the patient is in stable remission. In AL amyloidosis, the patient can be included in KT program if the extrarenal manifestation is minimal and if the patient has received potentially curative treatment and if the patient is in stable remission. So what's the role of physician? Most of these MGRS patients are initially presenting to general physician. So these patients should be identified early and should be referred to the nephrologist. What's the role of nephrologist? So we have to perform renal biopsy and we have to provide renal replacement therapy if needed, and we have to plan renal transplant in suitable patients. So what happened to our patient? You all can remember the estimated M protein concentration was 2.8 gram per deciliter, and bone marrow biopsy showed only less than 10% clonal plasma cell infiltration, and in the renal biopsy there was evidence of amyloidosis with caused nephropathy. So the diagnosis is monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance. For our patient, we started on regular renal replacement therapy due to rising serum creatinine and uremic symptoms, and she was referred to hemato-oncologist and started on bortezomib-based therapy. And in the future, we can consider kidney transplant if she is a suitable candidate. So the take-home message would be to differentiate monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance and monoclonal gammopathy of renal significance, because in MGUS, they don't need treatment, only monitoring is needed. And in MGRS, we have to start clone-directed therapy and supportive therapy, and early initiation of treatment help to prevent progressive renal damage, and it can reverse the renal damage as well. These are my references.
Thank you very much, Dr. Riaza, for that excellent presentation. We have time for questions. Any questions from the audience? Ananda?
Thank you, Riaz, for that comprehensive presentation. Now, you showed us what to do when you see, after the renal biopsy, when you see the lesion. Now, for physicians, it happens the other way. We first detect a monoclonal band, and then we have to proceed. So, when you diagnose MGUS, when should we go for a biopsy? Of all MGUS patients, do they need biopsies?
No, sir. If there is evidence of nephrotic syndrome in the patient, or if the patient is having unexplained rising serum creatinine, then we need treatment biopsy. And if there is evidence of acute glomerulonephritis, like if they are having active sediments in the urine with high blood pressure, we have to proceed with renal biopsy.
That is one question is, what is the mechanism of thrombotic microangiopathy in patients with MGRS?
Yes, in these patients, these monoclonal proteins are acting as autoantibody of H factor, and they activate the alternative complement pathway, and then there will be inflammatory process, and they damage the renal tissues, glomerulus and tubules. It's mainly a atypical HUS, initiating alternative complement pathway.
That's what, because I was just wondering whether it is similar to HUS.
Atypical HUS.
Right. So do you get a thrombocytopenia also in that?
Yes, sir, they can get. So in thrombotic microangiopathy patients, if they are having high clinical suspicion, we have to screen them for monoclonal gammopathy with serum protein electrophoresis, immunofixation study, and serum free light chain.
So what is the usefulness of the biopsy? Is it to determine treatment, or is to prognosticate? Or?
To diagnose MGRS, we need renal histological evidence.
True, but then that's only to diagnose. But
Yes.
then if you have somebody with monoclonal gammopathy, which not amounting to Waldenstrom's or multiple myeloma, and if there is renal impairment, then you can safely assume that it is MGRS. But
In MGUS patients, we don't treat those patients.
Yeah.
We only monitor them.
true, but when you do the biopsies, does your treatment differ
No, sir.
depending on the
It's
biopsy?
also clone-directed therapy. But if only MGUS is there without any renal involvement, they don't need treatment. If they have developed MGRS, then we have to start clone-directed therapy to prevent further renal damage. And clone-directed therapy can reverse the renal damage also.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, in the absence of further questions, I would like to thank Dr. Riaza for that brilliant presentation.
Thank you.
And would like to present you with a small token of appreciation. Dr. Dematapiti, also back to the stage.